What's up, everybody? I am gonna pull the drivetrain out of this truck today, my 66 Ford F100. There won't be any Charger stuff in this segment, but I got about 4 or 5 days of rain coming here. I know it's strange, California, who knew? And I probably won't be able to work outside, but just small bursts here and there. So thought I'd get started on unbolting everything, drive shaft coming out first, and then I got to pull 2 cross members out, and then I'm hoping to get this whole engine and trans out in one unit, because I don't really care about the scratching of things, and the whole truck's gonna be blown apart anyway and needs a new cab, and all the other sheet metal's off, so it's not a big deal. So I can rub and grind whatever I need to get it out. I'm also by myself today, so I'm gonna do everything I can, and yeah, so here we go. First things first. Lock your wheels. The reason I'm using a wrench here is because for one, it's a billet yoke, so the tolerances are super tight to the nuts, and these nuts were added by me. They came with nylocks, and the heads are a little smaller on the nylock nuts. So, but typically these U-joint straps have to be removed by just a wrench because of the access to the head of the bolt is real minimal. With all these days, everybody just uses impacts for everything. You don't even see air tools being used much. Batteries have kind of taken over the world, but you can't get them, can't get those tools in everywhere. So the good old wrench is always going to be a solid bet. Just takes a little longer, especially with removing stuff. You know, you can use an impact for everything. In fact, that's my preferred method to remove stuff, but I always caution everybody on putting stuff back together with an impact, because unless you're really familiar with how your tool is and how tight it is, don't go by the Ugga Dugga method, which is kind of silly. It's more of a joke than anything. Oops. But, okay, so got my drive shaft out. Unfortunately, this truck has a slip yoke output, which I am not a fan of. But you can see my drive shaft loop is keeping it off the ground. It's primarily more for the front. If the front were to let go, it doesn't beat everything like the bottom of the car or go through the bottom of the car. Let's see how much fluid comes out. I don't suspect much. Oh boy. Next, trans mount. As you can see, the cross members here. So obviously this isn't a stock cross member. This is fabricated. It's part of the suspension kit. And so I've got to take this guy off. And this is actually a factory cross member here. So that's got to come off. Well, yeah, I think I can get away with just taking off. Yeah, I guess we'll find out. But obviously, the rear cross member, that's a factory piece, has to come off. We're going to start with these guys here. So, get you guys set up. another annoying place where you have to use a wrench. I think there's going to be a lot of them in this disassembly because of the tight fit of everything. So this is Ford's E4OD transmission. So it's a 4-speed, obviously, overdrive. It came in the first gen Super Duty, and I believe this one's like a 1999 or a 2001, something in that era. It's not my favorite transmission as far as performance goes. It hasn't broken, but there is an issue with it where once it gets warm, fourth gear will not lock, so it just appears to be spinning the converter without the ability to lock. So it's super annoying. And before my trip, the fateful trip, the last trip, I took it to the my trans guy, and he's like, yeah, just run it for now and then bring it back to me and I'll go through it. And it has been rebuilt. It's only got about 5,000 miles on it, but it just never worked correctly. And I don't know if I've gone through a couple of controllers. I've got a Bauman or a Quick Shift 4 transmission controller, so it's an electronic transmission which requires a controller to actually make it work. It's not like the old TV cable, which I kind of wish it was almost, but I just like the ability to manually shift it, and I like transmissions when you shift them, they shift at the same time that you do it. It makes me crazy when you shift and then it doesn't shift until 2 or 3 seconds later. It just irritating. So I've often thought about putting a GM 4L80 in it, and it's probably the best move for my buck. I've often thought about a 6XD, which is a sequential, basically like a NASCAR transmission, dog box with straight cut gears, which would be super rad, but it'd still have a clutch pedal for starting and stopping, which is not ideal. But this truck's not going to be racing as long as I own it, but I do want it to appeal in case I have to sell it at some point to a racer, because it's definitely got the blood of a race car in it, but I just like it too much to wreck it. How ironic, huh? But yeah, it's been a very painful endeavor up till now. I did not come prepared. I can get some sockets. I'll be right back. I keep forgetting to turn the camera back on. So because this cross member actually is designed to sway out of the way for dropping the pan, it also brings an issue with being able to remove the cross member. So this is what I do. And holding this socket and impact at a slight bind, because it's a coarse thread bolt, I'm just going to back it out slowly until it passes by the Fifi, which is this little slash cut piece here. I don't know why they call them Fifis, they just do. Maybe someone in the comments can tell me why they're called Fifi. I do not know. Now, let's see that it's easily removable. If your bolt doesn't come when you're backing it out, I think I showed in a previous segment on how I do this. Basically just hook your open end wrench while you have your impact, and you just basically go under the shoulder of the bolt while you're backing it out like this. You're able to put pressure on underneath the hex cap, and then the other way is obviously easier. Goes right back in. these don't need to come out. They can just stay right where they're at. Actually, I have the cross member over there. So now got. Oh, I need to undo the bottom of the rear trans mount. It's like a 5/8. See, this is a stock cross member here, and it's a real pain. Basically, it's just because it's got bolts on top there with no weld nuts, bolts on the bottom, and then there's bolts here to attach it to this part of the cross member. So the main one actually goes to the top of the frame rail, and then it kind of clamshells there. So, and of course my brake lines run through it, and the crossover is protected up in here, as you can see there. Makes them, it captures them pretty nicely, so it's up and they're out of the way from debris. But I certainly could do a better job of maybe putting a cap over it, something like that. Maybe I'll do that. We'll see. I got bigger fish to fry at this point, getting this thing apart. Let's see here. See this mark here? I'm on my driver's side tie rod. As you can see, these trucks are rear steer, meaning the steering linkage is behind the front center of the axle. This is old school Ford design concept, but it's been heavily beefed up with this pitman arm with this double shear bracket on it, and there's a gusset on the back side here that kind of wraps around. See it right there? See that tooth? It's kind of a shark's tooth right here. That at some point it was actually rubbing right here. So that's good to know. I need to fix that. Basically just grind off the tip of it so it keeps that. But that's why we test. That's why we do stuff like this. Well, not the rollover part, but you know what I mean. Alright, let's get back to rubbing stuff. So I'm not gonna open up the brake lines while the truck's sitting out here if I can help it, only because of the moisture. And brake fluid absorbs moisture. That's like what it does. So if I can help it, I'm not going to open up any brake lines until I get the truck in the garage and start assessing the frame and that sort of thing. So I'm going to try to just avoid that. But some things are just unavoidable, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay, so now tops. Let's see here. a new battery, camera battery. And let's see if we can get this. So it looks like I did it differently on this side. I had the bolts going upwards. On the other side, it's going downwards over here. So switch calibrations. Alright, I got the engine mount nuts off, so the bolts are just kind of floating in there. I'm going to start pulling the little stuff now. Going to leave the spark plugs in. Just moving them out of the way to get these header bolts off. I'm not sure why, but these header bolts, these are ARP header bolts, and they don't have locking mechanisms on them. But I have never, aside from after I put them on and ran the engine, I've never had to touch these up. I've always tried them, but they've never been loose. So good on you, ARP, for producing a bolt that does not need Loctite or anything. In fact, I haven't seen high temp Loctite on the shelves in a long time. I wonder if they just stopped making it. It used to be green. I haven't checked to see if it's anywhere online, but I used to buy that stuff for motorcycles and exhaust, and it always worked really well unless you broke the seal, and then you have to redo it just like any other Loctite. But it's a great product. But anyway, these ARP bolts are second to none in my opinion, and they're not hard to work with like some of those locking tab ones that are super complicated and tough to work with, especially on like headers like these where they're home built, not the most perfect. The flanges are stainless works, which I highly recommend. These are my first set of headers I've ever built, and they are they're not pretty, but they flow, they work. Alright, so I think I'm close. I have got to let it sit outside tonight again because I don't have the ability to do this yank by myself. So I'm going to keep the fuel lines connected, coolant in there. I guess the coolant doesn't matter. I could probably just drain that, so I'm ready for tomorrow first thing to pull this. Actually, I don't even know if I can do it tomorrow, but anyway, I probably gonna leave this for today. Got just a small amount of stuff to unplug. I'm just trying to see through or think through this. I don't want to pull the plugs because then the combustion chambers will be exposed to the moisture. I know my exhaust valves, if they're open, that'll expose it, but it's more minimal than anything. And plus it's just for maybe at most 2 nights. But you can already see my head studs starting to rust a little, which bums me out, but I can always coat those. But yeah, it can't be new forever. But we're on our way, making headway.